What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Dreams to Reality podcast, brought to you by Gadgetline. Before we begin, I just want to quickly say, if you are looking to film a podcast, then please do reach out, because Gadgetline is the company you need to go with. With that said, I got a very special guest. Somebody I actually look up to, somebody whose story really inspires me, especially it's kind of the struggle this person has overcome and still manages to put a smile on her face every single day. That alone is inspiring within itself. Emma, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you, Cam?
Not too bad.
Good.
Not probably as well as you. And the reason why is I've got an 8-week-old baby, and last night you just come off holiday.
I know, and I'm soon to be a granny, so I shall be doing all the same as you.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow. How many kids do you have, Emma?
I've got 4.
4.
Yeah.
Do you have any grandkids at the moment?
No, just about. In 5 weeks' time, my eldest daughter.
5. Wow. So how old is your oldest daughter?
My eldest daughter is 25.
Awesome. And your youngest?
Youngest is 16.
Perfect. And why I say that's perfect is obviously from the work I do a huge amount of work in schools. So you're kind of going through it with the 16-year-old.
Yes.
Has she done her GCSEs?
She's just done her GCSEs in maybe not the conventional way that most people have done them, in that she's been home tutored for the last year.
Really?
So that's been a really interesting exercise. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. She was at an independent school in Bristol, and due to things that were going on in our family, she really wasn't happy, struggling with some mental health issues and not fitting in. So I decided to take the pressure off and look into home tutoring for the last year, which isn't the normal. Everybody thought I was crazy to take child out of school at year 11, the crucial year. But basically, it's been the best thing that we've ever done, and the best thing for her. So she's literally just sat her exams and waiting for results with the rest of everyone.
Awesome. How did she manage her time then? Does somebody do that for her? Because it seems quite, when you think of homeschooling, you think, you relax a lot of the time and you just get a tutor, or I don't really know.
It's a very difficult thing to do, actually, and something I just jumped into, like most things I do, and thought I'll worry about it later, but I knew it was the right thing for her at the time. It's been a learning curve. It's something that isn't regulated. So basically, when you decide to take a child out of school, you have to inform the council, and the school will inform the council that they are off roll. You'll receive a letter from the council telling you, is that it? And you fill out a form, and then you're on your own.
Wow.
And unfortunately, something I'm campaigning for is that there is no regulation to check that once that child has come out of school, that you are going to do what you say you're going to do, and that child is going to be home educated.
Wow.
And I think, there's been various programs made around the subject. But basically, I had a little bit of assistance from the school, but I was on my own in terms of finding the tutors, and trying to fulfill all of the subjects, which were 11 at the time. We managed 10 of them.
Wow.
The only one we didn't do was art, which is really, really difficult to try and do from home. But I knew that she was motivated, so that she would be able to motivate herself at home. It would be less time tutoring than had she been in school. And that's how we manage.
What about friendships and stuff and relationships?
Well, that's another thing that people are very against home tutoring. But what I would say is that if your child is quite extrovert and not too introverted, and has a good set of friends either still within that school or outside, I think that's really, really important, that they don't become isolated at home. We worked really hard to make sure that some of her lessons were at home and some were at her tutors. I really didn't want her sat around a kitchen table
all the time
for a year being bored.
Of course.
So we worked out a timetable, but it ended up being 20 hours a week for all of her subjects that we managed to do. And you get an awful lot more done when it's one-to-one.
Of course you do.
But it's tiring, you haven't got the escape of a classroom where you can sit back and
Did you ever kind of be honest now. Did you ever kind of doubt yourself or think, oh, did I make the right decision for
I did
my
initially,
daughter?
because when I interviewed all of the tutors that came to home, first of all, to see whether I liked them, whether I thought they'd be good enough, but more importantly, that my daughter would feel comfortable with them, because she'd be the one sitting with them day in, day out. I think initially they thought they've said to me that they thought I was raving mad to do that.
Really?
It wasn't something they'd ever done. They sort of tutored children who were in mainstream school to help them. Needed extra help, but to actually do the whole curriculum was something different. Retrospectively, they have all emailed and just said, thank goodness you did do what you did.
Yeah.
I even had an apology from my GP recently.
Wow.
Who didn't support me initially when Rosie was absent from school. However, she did say to me that, I should have listened to you. I will learn from it. And at the end of the day, you're her mum. You know what's best for her.
Yeah.
So I think it's given, certainly people locally and the companies and charities I've worked with, some idea.
What charities?
Well, I've worked with various different ones in Bristol that I'm sort of helping around children that are currently excluded in school. I've been quite interested. I think my story, because it hasn't been usual, has attracted quite a lot of attention. Initially, when a child is homeschooled, everybody automatically presumes the child has behavioural issues, that they've been naughty or excluded, which is not often the case. In our situation, it was around a family death, and the grief and the anxiety that had caused. So I felt that she needed to be at home. So it's been quite interesting, and particularly in Bristol, that Bristol has the second highest exclusion rate in the whole of the country.
Really?
And that's quite scary. And what provision there is for children, and particularly children that don't have the opportunities that can be homeschooled, because it's clearly very expensive to pay for tutors for a whole year, and not everybody is able to have that. So it's been interesting looking at the various provisions that there are currently in Bristol around excluded children. And I find it very frustrating that they are only able to offer them the basic English, maths, and maybe one other humanity. So there may be children out there that are facing adversity that are clearly very gifted academically, but for the reason of their exclusion, it's another knock that they're having to deal with, that they may only be able to take 3 exams and then have to resit them again maybe another year later,
definitely.
which isn't ideal.
So let's take it a little bit back, Emma, to the beginning. Were you born in Bristol?
I was born in Bath.
In Bath.
So not too far away.
Not too far away from here. Tell me about the first, say, 20 years of your life. What did you do? What did you want to be? And did you fulfill anything, or did you go off into a complete different path?
Well, I'm 50 years old now, and I think I'm only just beginning to fulfill the path of what I wanted to do. I don't think I ever fully knew what I wanted to do. I didn't particularly like school. I was quite bright at school, but much to my parents' disappointment, I possibly didn't achieve what I should have. So I think at the time I was at an all-girls school. Expectation environment wasn't particularly high compared to the pressures on teenagers now.
Do you think expectations is a good thing or a bad thing? Or does it depend who the person is, what the situation is?
I think it's always good to have a sort of to aim for the highest expectation environment. I think it's good to be in that environment. No one wants to be anywhere where there are no goals to be reached.
Of course.
So maybe expectation isn't the right word, but I think setting yourself goals, having a network of support around you to achieve those is a good thing. So maybe that's what I mean by expectation for any young person in school, that they are motivated by those teachers who have the best for them.
Not just in school, just in life.
And in life
anyway.
in general, exactly.
Like
exactly.
Standards in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. So school, did you come out with good grades, bad grades?
I came out with some GCSEs. I didn't go to university. I like to tell everyone I've
Did
been
you
to
not?
No, I have been. I like to say that I've been to the University of Life with all of my experiences.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, and I may not have had all the papers and exams, but I feel I've achieved quite a lot without maybe the side of things that...
So you said your oldest daughter is 25?
Yep, 25 and then 23. My son is 19 and my youngest daughter's 16.
Okay, so married?
None of them are married. No, one just about to have a baby. The two eldest girls, very independent, own their own homes, work very hard. Both decided not to go to university. They were very driven, very entrepreneurial. So managed to find work, I think, based on their personalities, their determination, and the skills that they had, and they have grown massively. My son is 19. He, like most boys, age 19, hasn't got a clue where he's going yet.
No.
At all. And as I say, my youngest has just done her exams and is probably the most unique in terms of my four, in terms of where she wants to go based on the adversity that she's been through and how she wants to help others.
You said about being entrepreneurial, very hardworking, very focused, your children are. But of course, that has to also come from somewhere.
Yep.
What was you doing around the same age? Are you with your children's father? What's the whole situation there?
Okay, so...
so I guess 24, 25...
I was married very young, at 22, had my 4 children with my husband, who sadly passed away in 2014.
Okay.
There's no ideal age for any child to lose their parent.
No, not at all.
But I think for my 4 that were at varying degrees of their life, I had one doing A-levels, one doing GCSEs, moving schools. But their father was very entrepreneurial, very self-taught, very, very determined. I think we were both like that as parents, striving to help them achieve what they wanted to achieve. But obviously losing a parent at that pivotal time, and the years of illness beforehand. So
that's what happened. So it wasn't out of the blue.
No, it was a gradual thing. And Jonathan, my late husband, was ill for quite some time, and needed a lung transplant. So I worked tirelessly at the time to get him to the right hospital. Off of the back of that, sadly, when he died, I was actually writing a book about transplantation and how it not only obviously affects the patient, but the families and particularly the children. And it's a very isolated topic that unless you know somebody who has had a transplant, not many people know much about organ donation other than what you hear in the news now, and obviously the change in the current law next year.
What is that change?
Well, so the new change is trying to catch up with Wales, in that in 2020 there will be a new legislation around organ donation, that basically everybody is opted in unless you opt out.
Okay. Is that a positive step?
It is a positive step, but what I advocate in my charity, Transplant Association, which I set up after my husband's death,
plug
is yes, Transplant Association. It's quite poignant at the moment with, as I say, with the new changes. Is the most important thing is obviously to be on the organ donation register, but much more importantly than that is to discuss your wishes with your family and loved ones, because what people don't realise is that it's still legal to overrule, and a lot of transplants are being overruled by family members who clearly at a very stressful stage can overrule an individual's wish. even if they carry a donor card.
That's
so
crazy. Yeah.
So the most important message is to make sure that all of those wishes are discussed with family members, so that, you know, should anything unfortunate happen, they know that person's wishes.
Yeah, there is no doubt, just talking to you, how much you love your kids and putting your children first. And you said about, obviously, when your husband passed away. But how did that affect you? Because you must have been together, what, 20 years?
23 years.
23
nearly.
years.
23.
So when you're speaking about it, you always talk about your kids and how it affected them. But how did that actually affect you, if you don't mind me asking?
Not at all.
I know you said that he was ill for quite some time.
Yeah.
But even when my nan was ill, she had it was quite a short period of time when she had cancer to when she actually died. But even when I realised she was going to die, I still didn't think she was going to die until she actually died. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and it kind of hit me.
No.
It hit me at a few different points. So how did you handle that whole process? And I just know how close I am to my wife now, and I've not even been together that long, really.
Yeah.
So when you're kind of been best friends with somebody for 22, 23 years, and then that happens, how did that affect you mentally? How do you recover from it? Have you, like, what do you do?
It's a hard one, and I think as a mother, your immediate first reaction is to protect your children and worry about yourself later, which is definitely what I did, to protect my 4 children to what I knew was coming ahead, and what I knew was going to be a long, protracted illness, and that hopefully he would get a transplant, which he did, but sadly a year later he passed away. Wow. So in terms of me, I think, like most mums out there, you tend to do everything you can for your children to help them, guide them, and you worry about yourself latterly. I think I was fortunate in a way that I had some time beforehand to understand the illness. I am somebody who possibly should have gone into something medical. I've got a morbid interest in everything medical, so I was very, very prepared. And I think you just get swept up with everything, and I go into sort of doing mode. I process things quite quickly, and it's quite a weird thing that sometimes the more that gets thrown at me, the better I deal with things.
Yeah.
But of course that can have physical effects on you, because you, as everybody knows, you can't keep whizzing along at 70 miles an hour, because eventually you'll have a head-on collision. You know, nobody is invincible. I think for me... Have
you come close to that collision? Have you had that collision?
I think there were a couple of times where I probably was seen, and I know by others who couldn't quite comprehend how I could still be standing with so much going on. I think for me, I just took stock and thought, I've got 2 options here. I either sink or swim. And I was never going to sink. I was always going to swim. I was always, and even more so when you're left as the sole parent, that you only have one.
Let's be honest though, you had every reason to sink, really.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's happened, as I say, and it's happened more than once, unfortunately. So explain. So after my first husband died, I was on my own for a bit, and then I met another lovely gentleman Andrew, who I married in 2018.
Okay.
In January. Andrew had a history of mental health issues. He was ex-military. And I think, being the sort of person that I am, I knew that. I think I went into a sort of fixing mode a bit, really, and maybe underestimated quite how ill he had been. We got married in January, and by May, Andrew had taken his own life. Damn. So we had another double whammy of not only the children losing their paternal father, but also their stepfather. And with that brought another whole set of issues with grief and anxiety, which is what culminated in the sort of explosion, I think, with my youngest daughter. That it was just too much.
It's still quite a short period of time as well.
And it is, yeah. But there is no
You can't write it, can
there's
you?
no. And I often say that. I mean, you end up sort of laughing because you really couldn't write a book, really. But I think
But you could.
I could, yeah, no, I could, and I have thought about it, but I tend to channel all of those, rather than any sort of ego, I try and channel it to help the causes in particular.
And your journey's far from over too. So
absolutely,
writing a book
it's the
now,
beginning of a new chapter now, and I think that's the way I always think about things, that I don't dwell. I mean, of course, you never forget those loved ones, and you learn a lot about yourself.
So
massively.
I asked you at the start, is there anything out of bounds? And you said no.
Yep.
How was that period? Because obviously mental health is such a huge topic at the moment, and we all experience some type of mental health. And I think you actually said it about the transplant. You said it doesn't affect the people, it affects your family. And it also is similar with mental health as well. What's the statistic? I think they said 1 in 4 people... Is it 1 in 4 people have struggle with mental health?
It's meant to be two out of 3 now, and
is it really?
And actually, the statistics, they can state whatever they want.
But really, my point I'm trying to say is, for example, your ex-husband, he was going through his own personal battles and struggles, but it affects everybody around him. It affects you, it affects your family, it literally affects everybody.
Absolutely.
So one thing, because I've recently went on a mental health first aid course, and I kind of went in there with the intention that I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to learn how to do things, but of course that's not the case. But one thing it does do is kind of spread a bit more awareness and actually have a slight better understanding. So how was it? Was that kind of your first experience of being around somebody?
No, I think I'd always been not suffering from mental health issues myself, but other family members who had. So I'd had a lot of experience growing up around mental health with members and my mother. So I knew the signs and what to recognise. I think that just escalated as I got older in other people around me and friends, and what I witnessed they were going through. And then more latterly with my first husband in transplantation, that was a huge issue.
I can imagine.
And something I try again through my charity to try and sort of express to people is that when you're going for a transplant, obviously you've got to be ill enough to get onto a register to get an organ, but you've also got to be well enough to be able to go through that surgery.
Wow.
And the pressure that puts on you mentally, particularly when you wake up post-surgery and sadly someone else has died and you have their organ in your body, it's a mind-blowing
You don't think
mental.
about it, do you?
No,
Wow.
and people don't. And it's and how that affects the patient, and as I say, the knock-on, the ripple effect that mental health has with family members and the carers. And then moving on to, I guess I've seen all areas of extremities, from mild, well, I wouldn't like to say any case isn't mild. If you're suffering from mental health, it's not mild to that person, but getting to the stage where it becomes so severe and someone is prepared to take their own life is it can't get any worse than that, can it?
Did you see that coming?
Yes.
Because sometimes you hear stories when people just didn't expect it. And
no, I think I knew that he had had issues previously and had tried unsuccessfully, and sadly the statistics are such that if you have tried once or twice before, that you're more likely to succeed, particularly in men. And it's a huge issue statistically with men at the moment, particularly in the UK. And also if you've had a parent, and sadly my husband's father had also committed suicide. So your stats basically double if that happens. So I wasn't overly surprised. It was a hideous situation. I was the one that found him. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And it takes a lot to process, to try and understand how anyone could feel that mentally ill with the support that is out there. I think I've over the past year of processing, I think it's just I don't think it's possible to rationalize unless you have been in that situation. I can only put it that it's like a switch just goes, and it's like a moment of madness. And I think it's just very hard for the people that are left behind, the shrapnel, the mess that goes everywhere, and particularly when children are involved as well. It's hard, and it's something that will never leave me. I don't let it take over my life. I will often think about it, and it would only be natural if you thought, well, if I did this, and this.
What would you say to people? Because I've heard it before, and I always try to defend it, and people who don't really understand mental health, and they talk about suicide, how it is selfish to take your life when you're leaving the family behind and stuff like that. What is your take on that comment? Because I'm assuming you've probably heard it before.
Loads of people have said that to me.
How can you leave your family behind? How, you know?
And particularly when we were newly married and very, very happy. And I think the average person
doesn't discriminate, does it?
No, and the average person just cannot comprehend. And that's the difficulty with mental health, is that, you know, it doesn't pre-select people. As we know, there are many celebrities. It doesn't matter what you've got, what you haven't got. It's not as pre-selective as that. But I think it's selfish? There are moments sometimes when I get angry and think, yes, it is, because I've been left to deal with things. And then there's other times when I just feel desperately sad that somebody could feel that low. And I understand that with medications that people are put on as a sticking plaster rather than actually getting to the root of what is causing, and most things you can trace back to an incident or something that's going on that may trigger that, other than just a chemical imbalance in the brain. And sadly, a lot of the medications that I feel are too freely prescribed, and the way that they're unmonitored, shall I say, is that it's most people that are taking them for depression, that they may feel better through taking them. And so what do they naturally do? They just stop taking the tablets, which is the worst thing you can do, because you read any sort of packet of antidepressants and it's the warning sign, because it can actually give you worse suicidal thoughts than you had in the beginning. So I think there's masses that needs to be done around how I feel they're freely prescribed. I think from the experience I've had myself and with my children around mental health, there are lots and lots of other alternatives around CBT, talking, sport. There's a huge amount of other things available if you've got the support network and you're prepared, which ultimately I think is the thing, that you've got to be prepared to help yourself. And that's sometimes very, very difficult, and difficult for the people around.
Because you can't really help somebody who doesn't...
Not when they're feeling that low, they can't, no. And it's that old adage, isn't it? Come on, pull yourself together. There's always someone worse off. Well, that's wasted words on somebody that's really, really struggling. Yeah, exactly.
Stop being a baby.
Exactly. But it's worrying, and it's one of the things that through all of the experiences I've had, I worry probably the most about for young people, my children, how the world is changing and how mental health, you know, is the big talking point. And it will be, and it will get worse, unfortunately.
And I think I talked about a little bit the word being selfish. And I used to be one of these people who used to, before, say, 7-8 years ago, who would have thought it was selfish, until I actually went through kind of my own experiences. And now I remember when I was into that mind state, I had nothing around me. I didn't have any support system. And in my head, I was doing everybody else a favor.
Exactly.
I felt like I was the one holding everybody back. Yeah. I thought, my dad's got that side of the family. I'm just in the way over here. Same as my uncle and auntie, my friends, I'm just holding them back. So I think when people go through it, they convince themselves actually not that they're doing something bad. They actually think they're potentially helping a particular situation.
Yeah, no, I have heard that spoken many a times.
Like, actually, do you know what? If it would be easier if I'm not here, they won't miss me. Then I can stop causing people all these kind of problems and troubles. When really, it's not actually. It's not as simple as that, and we always tell ourselves, whether it's on that serious level or even when it's on a smaller level, we tell ourselves stories all the time. And I think what we need to do as people, if we can, whether that is through counselling, coaching, or just even talking to ourselves, is that what I'm telling myself right now, is it true?
Yeah.
Is it true? And most of the time, if you really kind of pick it at it a little bit, you actually realise the stories we tell ourselves 99% of the time, made up statistic there, is false.
Exactly. And that's where hypnotherapy is really good at sort of convincing, and NLP, in terms of almost, I've had quite a lot of experience with my daughter in this, is that you can get into a certain mindset that I'm sure you see with lots of the kids that you go and speak to. And it's almost technically like they need a little bit of rewiring rather than this habitual thought process. And there are lots of things that you can do, and NLP being a really great one that I've seen with my daughter, of actually one-to-one coaching and basically setting down a circle like a piece of cake with your balance of life, your wheel of life, and putting in the sections that are important to you, and clearly what might be there on a Monday isn't necessarily going to be what you'll put on a Friday, because everybody's day is different, isn't it?
Of course.
And I think it's about dissecting. One of the things I've probably learned is to try and just slow down and take each day as it comes, rather than be totally overwhelmed on one day that, I'm never going to get to the end of the week because I got this and this and this. And how just little exercises by writing things down. I mean, I'm a real to-do list person. I have lists about lists, but it's really fulfilling when you've got a list of what you're going to do for the day, and you can tick them all off and forget about those because they're done, and you've only got a few things left. So there's lots of things you can do to self-help yourself, I feel, but I understand if you're on your own and you haven't got a network, then that's going to be very, very difficult. So it's trying to reach out to those organisations and people that can help you. And I know that's difficult. I know things have improved slightly in schools. There's an awful lot to be done, because it's such a huge issue. You know, when I was at school, I don't recall having any talks on mental health, mental well-being. There were always a few kids at school that maybe had issues with not the drug abuse there is now. They were caught smoking cigarettes or maybe the odd bit of weed behind the bike sheds, but not on the level that there is now. And we didn't have any staff. You just went to speak to your teacher and hoped that they would be helpful and that they wouldn't tell your parents. Whereas now, you know, clearly it has changed. And I do think we've discussed this before. Social media, whilst it's great for awareness and when used properly, can be the most fantastic tool. But as we know, with young people, it can also be absolutely detrimental to their mental well-being and the pressures that they seem to put on themselves. And I've seen that with all, you know, I've seen varying degrees from, you know, when my eldest daughter first came into contact with MSN, I think it was then. She's 25.
MSN. Wow.
Do you remember MSN?
Do you remember MSN?
MSN. And then we got onto Facebook and all of the things. And Bebo, that's right. And it's just moved. And now, as I say, my 16-year-old has... Well, actually, she did have everything.
It was like the start of our generation. For mine and your 25-year-old. It was literally around that time. And I literally remember MSN, Bebo. You spend all day with your friends and you go home and you're literally chatting to the same friends on it all night. And
I know. And I've talked to my daughter, my eldest daughter works within social media as well. So she sees it from a very different, tangible
but it's
angle.
True. I just feel like the thing with social media, like anything, it needs to be regulated. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they can do it. I don't know what approach they can do. But all I know is that it can be extremely damaging, as we said. And if you look at a lot of these young girls as well, especially a lot of the young girls I work with, there's some of the things they share within my workshop as an open group, things, their messages they're getting from older people.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
As you know for yourself,
hideous.
right? And it is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
But there's no repercussions to it.
No.
There's nothing really what can come back to them.
No.
Nothing.
No.
And that's dangerous.
No, it is. And I think it's very difficult. And sometimes you question as a parent, we give them mobile phones to, initially. This has been an argument in our house.
So what age do you think? So I got a daughter now. She's 5.5, 6 in October. We do limit the iPad to literally about 20 minutes a day. Luckily, she's not really that interested anyway. She'd rather just be out. She'd rather have our time. But it's going to come a point in school, her friends are going to have phones, whatever. Yeah. At what point do you allow your daughter, your son to have a phone? Because I remember being in Vodafone. I was like, what's the youngest age somebody's bought a phone? They said the age of 7. A contracted phone
at 7.
At the age of 7. And you have to understand, not only on social media, you can get onto some websites on your phone.
That's always been my concern as well. What else you can freely get onto if you know what to type into the search engine. I think my eldest daughter was 11.
He's smiling over there. Yeah. He knows that's why.
Yeah. He's on his phone. We don't know what he's doing on his phone. I think my eldest daughter was 11, and that was primarily from a safety point of view because she was at school in Bristol, and we gave her a phone in case we were late to pick her up.
Did you say your eldest daughter?
My eldest daughter.
Yeah, but
who's
back then when she was 11, all you have on your phone is the game Snake.
Yes. Yeah.
2 numbers.
Yeah,
it's a bit different to what it is now. Yeah,
there was nothing. Whereas both my, phones are the bane of my life. I'm paying out for contracts. They go over their limits. I put bars on, and no data seems to be enough for what they're trawling. I was, funny enough, this morning I was at the stage of using it as my last tool to discipline them, that actually they're going to be cancelled, but I can't cancel it because I'm the one that's going to be paying the contract fee for severing it early. But no, they are a nightmare, and we have.
So what age?
Well, I don't know, because I've just come back from holiday and I've seen parents in a restaurant with what look like babies, 2-3-year-olds that are just left with iPads.
It's easier though. It's easier to give your kid a phone than
of course
to
it is, isn't it?
Attention.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really, really scary. And it's more scary when you see them whizzing around, and they clearly know how to work these things, don't they? Probably better than I can. I don't know. I think,
it's a good conversation to have, though. It is.
I mean, I tend to we have a sort of regular talk about sort of blue light stuff and how it impedes your sleep. And I try and encourage particularly my daughter to, switch the phone off at least half an hour before she goes to bed. But as we know, they all go to bed with them charged up. They're under their pillow, fire hazard, and and unless I physically take it off.
First thing they look at when they wake up, last thing before they go to bed, when they're having a toilet, they're on their phone.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They spend an extra 10 minutes having a toilet just because they're flicking Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it because I'm guilty as well, and it's trying to understand that we're not actually a slave to our phone.
No.
And a lot of people are. And I say that because I actually put on Instagram. I'm a big fan of social media, but I also see the bad side of it. And I said, send me your screen time. Do you know what screen time is?
Yes, I've got it on my phone.
So I said, send me your screen time. And I think the most time I had on there was 13 hours a day. I'm not lying to you. I can show it to you now. That was obviously like a one-off. But the most common, I would say, was between 6 and 9 hours. I was getting back 6 to 9 hours. Mind you, their phone is banned when they're in school.
Yeah.
So that 6 to 9 hours is outside of school time. How crazy is that? 6 to 9 hours glued to your phone.
And I always think, I did the very same exercise. I came off of all social media a year ago, apart from my LinkedIn for work. And I can't tell you how liberating it was. Because I was one of those people that kept checking, thinking 4 or 5 hours. Blimey, what could I have done that's been far more useful in 5 hours today? Add that up over the week. And I was horrified by how habitual it becomes to just keep checking. And then you look at something and then that would take you off somewhere else. And before you know it, you're just submersed in this phone
of a world.
And I've always been someone that is happy to text people, but I'm happy to pick up the phone because I think it's always really important to and I had this conversation last week with my daughter. I still advocate for kids to write thank you letters. That's how old-fashioned I'm accused of being. But even my own daughter said, well, I wish grandma had a phone, then I could text her. Well, why can't you just either phone her and speak to her or write a letter? And I think, coming off of social media, it's great because you see people and you can actually have a conversation now.
Handwritten letter.
And they can talk, you can talk about what you've been, seen and done rather than meeting someone who knows exactly what you've done because you've posted it on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. The meals you've eaten, and it's a
highlight reel, 100% a highlight reel.
Yeah, but I think it is actually. I mean, it's addictive. It clearly is. Like other things, it becomes.
They talk about that with the chemicals. When you get a message, you're itching to see what the message says. Even if it's Vodafone saying you've gone over your data, you have to read it. You have to see what it is before you could do anything else.
And then there's the pressure to respond, isn't there? That someone's actually seen you've read the message, so you've got to respond to it right now. Well, as if you've got a job or anything else to do.
Because you are much, 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 much older than I am.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
But how was that? Because I was somewhat raised in that transition of technology and phones. Luckily, I feel like I was kind of the last generation who would still go out with their friends, still play football, still actually not be glued to the computer or their phones. But how was it from seeing that whole transition happen from when you was raised to what it is now? Or was it just,
I didn't have a phone. I mean, I literally, if I wanted to have a private conversation, I would get my 2 or 5p, whatever it was, and I would walk down to the local phone box and make a phone call. And I can't remember actually, I didn't have one of those bricks of a mobile phone. I think I probably got given a phone with my first job. I definitely think, I may be generalising here. I do, having had 4 children, only one of them a boy, it's definitely worse, my experiences with girls. My son tends to get on his phone, to text friends about sport, see you at the gym, but he doesn't spend hours and hours. In fact, he might not look at it for hours. And he doesn't really post on social media. I think for girls, it seems to be much more important. And following people, influencers. That's the big discussion in our house at the moment. Particularly after Love Island and what's been going on and social influencers. Who watches
Love Island?
Well, exactly. Who
watches
does?
Love Island?
I even missed the final on holiday. I nearly signed up to the ITV2 so I could have it abroad, but I resisted.
Emma, you just ruined a whole
I know. I was talking so well, wasn't I? And now I've ruined it all. But no, I say, going back to it, it can be used, in a positive way. And for my youngest daughter, who's got aspirations of a singing career, she has started posting her.
Your youngest daughter?
Yeah, so she's been posting things. And whilst we were on holiday, she's dreadfully excited because it's gone from 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 viewers. And then obviously different people in the music industry where it gets shared. So I think for those sorts of things,
you should have brought her along. Should have got her on the podcast.
It's great, that it can be, to say, but it's how it's monitored, and I think regulated, it's really difficult as a parent, and I sort of still maintain, whilst I'm paying for the phone contract, if I need to check something, I will do. And I have find my, even to my kids' disgruntlement, I have find my friends on there that I'm paying the bill, and I want to be able to know from a safety. They think I'm stalking them, But I think most parents are, they do now have it on there.
How do you build that trust, though?
It's really difficult.
How do you build that trust with your children so they come to you and they will tell you, even if it's not what you want to hear, but they will tell you because they trust you and they want you to somewhat protect them and also be there for them because they may have made a mistake. Compared to, for example, I wouldn't tell my dad anything because I was so scared of getting punished.
Yeah.
So I would still do it anyway, but I just wouldn't tell him.
Well, I probably had a similar sort of childhood. So I went the complete reverse when I was a parent, to do everything the complete opposite to how I was brought up. So I've always been very, very open with the children. So I've been very fortunate that whatever it is, they always know that they can come and speak to me. And thankfully they have. Is not the case for lots of people and children I know who are very secretive, and it puts you in a very difficult position when you know what someone else's children are up to and the parents are oblivious. So and that's again another issue with social media, isn't it, that children think they can post all of these things. I think the biggest thing I've taught my kids is that, with anything on social media, is to be prepared that anything you comment or write about, could be printed off and used against you. And so that's all I ever have reiterated to them. And particularly nowadays, I mean, my background always used to be in personnel and recruitment. We just relied on references. Nowadays, the first thing that anyone's going to do is check your credentials on social media. And if they've seen you posting pictures on a drunken holiday, etc., etc.,
they want to know where you went.
They want to know, they want to know what happened, and but employers do use it.
It's true,
and it's quite frightening now. It's all available, all the images. So I think you just have to think very, very carefully. But I don't think maybe children or young adults understand quite that it stays there, and it stays on Google, and it's very difficult to get things off Google when it comes up in a search engine and your name is attached to it. I
want to type your name in now, actually.
Yeah, see what you can find on me.
Emma. With that said,
hopefully there's a few good things on there.
I'm fascinated by business and money and stuff and goals and dreams, of course, being in the situation I am, and I'm always telling the younger generation to have aspirations and to strive. You've been a part of some very successful businesses. Is that correct?
Yes, I have.
What businesses?
I've had a food business. I was involved in
What type of food?
I set up a business years ago in in Bristol called Supalicious, which, if anyone's ever tried HelloFresh or Gusto, where you get recipes and the food. Yeah, so I set that up.
I say Gusto. How
Gusto,
Bristol?
yeah. So I set that up, that was in 2013, I think, with two
so that was kind of the start of the...
Yeah. And then actually, when my husband became ill, it was impossible to work. So I actually, with colleagues, approached HelloFresh, actually. So they took on our database. Yeah. They were the big guys then. We were first into the UK, and then they came in with a lot of money behind them, which we just couldn't match. Now we're all
thinking, how much?
Yeah, not much. No, not much. No.
So that was quite cool. But before,
so that was that, and then before that, I always worked in HR, personnel, and recruitment. I was lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mum for the majority of the time with my children. On my husband's death, he had a very successful IT business, which I knew a little bit about, but obviously was thrust into the driving seat when he passed away. So
how was that?
For 3 years, yes, I think I hope none of them are watching this, but I think I was notoriously known as the Karen Brady of the boardroom, that it was myself and 7 or 8 other guys. I think I probably...
When you mean guys, you actually mean...
In terms of staff and other directors, men, that I had to be in a boardroom situation with. and try and stabilize what was quite uncertain in the business, because my husband was the owner and ran a very tight ship.
So how is that dynamic then? Because you think, okay,
It's interesting.
They think stay at home mum.
Yeah.
I know you now, so I know what your personality is like. But they might have some type of perception before you come. Did the dynamic change within the company? Like, was it hard to come in and not demand respect, but also?
I think it was difficult for both parties. I think they were very concerned that had I not been working in the industry for the length of time, the 25 years that Jonathan had, that I was just going to make knee-jerk reactions, which of course I wasn't, because I was thinking of 60 members of staff and their family and the impact it would have.
It's a big place. On mine. I've drove past it.
Yeah, not only on my family, but obviously all of the staff. So I think we did everything on mutual respect. And honesty, that I was very lucky to have had a team running the company for so many years that stayed very, very loyal. And I managed to sort of stabilize that along with the team, and then ended up doing a management buyout last year, which was a very interesting exercise. I had a chairman who helped me, but I learned an awful lot about business. And particularly in the Bristol area and around IT, so I sort of became a sort of specialist in that area, which I didn't think I would be. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's very it's a very male dominated industry. That never puts me off at all. In fact, I'm much better in that scenario, I think. But yeah, it was an interesting time, but I think we all learned a lot.
So what's one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made?
Not getting enough qualifications behind me. And I know that sounds really, really random, because I have managed to achieve quite a lot of things. But there's probably two things. I think if I had my time again, I wished I'd worked harder at school, because I was very capable. But like most teenagers...
How would that change your journey though?
I think particularly as a woman and a working mum, and the concerns I have for all of my children, particularly my girls, is to be able to get a really good set of qualifications behind you, that you've always got a backup, that's something you can fall back to after you've had children. You know, I was very fortunate that I could stay at home, but the things have changed massively.
Especially,
nowadays, both parents have to work, rising childcare costs, and I've been going through this with my eldest daughter now, that what she's earning, and unless I step in to help with childcare costs, it really doesn't work out cost effective to go back to work. However, if you're in a profession where you can command a higher salary, well, it does make it feasible. You've got a lot more options open to you if you've got those qualifications. So particularly around my love of languages, I wished I'd gone further with my languages. I can still speak very good French, but I wish I had pursued that and maybe gone on to university and studied French and got the qualifications. I don't think it holds me necessarily back now, because I'm not in a position that I need to go out and get a job. It's just something I wish I had fulfilled that goal in me and proved to myself that I could have done it. Equally, my passion for traveling now, I think it's really important for young people to get out there and get outside of their...
Why?
Because I think the biggest education you can have is traveling, learning about different cultures, about different places. And I think I seem to be doing that now in my 50s as my children are getting older. And I wished I'd done a lot more traveling when I was younger, but I didn't. I left home very early and I was sort of forced into the workplace, really. And I didn't have an opportunity to do that. But I encourage all of my children to travel.
Amazing. So you asked me before this podcast, what's the questions, stuff like that. And I said, we just freestyle it. But there is one question I ask all of my guests.
Yeah.
If you could sit down with any three people, dead or alive in the world, famous, not famous, who would it be and why? Any three people, dead or alive.
Okay. I would probably choose Mother Teresa.
Okay. Why?
Just everything I know about her and her continual caring empathy. I've got a lot of time for people in third world countries that just are so selfless, which is what I think that all of us can learn a lot about ourselves, in particularly in the 20th century, and the pressures of everything, that there are not enough people out there like her and her charitable missionary work that she did. Secondly, I'm a real big fan of Michelle Obama.
Wow, okay.
I've just read her book. I love her and her husband, both of them. I think, I seem to be attracted to people that have had really tough upbringings.
Like Donald Trump?
Not like Donald Trump. No, not like Donald Trump at all. No. But I think, someone like Michelle Obama, I think, who had remained very, very dignified, I think, in what was a very difficult time in America with her husband and job. And thirdly, who would I have?
Wow, guess how old Michelle Obama is? Going off. Guess how old she is?
She's 56, is she now?
55.
55, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and she looks incredible. And she's still doing masses of good work. Along with probably Oprah Winfrey and all what she does. My third one, who would it be?
Mary Poppins?
Not Mary Poppins, no. I think it would have to be somebody musical, I think. I would probably... you've really stumped me on that one. Who are your three?
I don't know.
Give me a bit of time.
My three changes all the time.
Does it?
I think one would be my grandmother, who I kind of live with, who was like the mum to me. When she passed away, like that was a big thing for me. I just think I would love to show her my little family now.
Yeah.
I think more than anything.
Yeah.
But as far as kind of on a professional basis, it's such a difficult one because it does really change all the time. I liked Muhammad Ali. Not because of just his boxing, but what he stood up for, politics, especially around the Vietnam War, when he refused to go, and kind of that decision alone. Who else? Not you, Dave. I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe somebody like Warren Buffett or something.
Really?
I don't know, just he seems to be, despite being obviously one of the richest men in the world, he seems to be fairly humble and still works hard every single day, and he gives a lot back. So I don't know if I could learn anything from that. I'm really unsure. Or unless I, just go out and say Beyonce, because she's incredible. So
actually, I think
I'm a bit in two different minds.
Yeah.
Like Beyonce is like, I mean, my wife wouldn't be happy, but I think she wouldn't mind either. It's Beyonce.
Well, in that case, then I could have my guilty pleasure, which would be, and now his name's completely escaped me. Who in The Greatest Showman? What's his name? The actor, the Australian, Hugh Jackman. Thank you very much.
To be fair,
Hugh Jackman. Yes, for more reasons than one.
Anyway, guys, that's the end of this podcast. Thank you for joining. See, but that's one thing actually about these people, like Hugh Jackman, all these talented actors. You don't actually realise how talented they are until you look at behind the scenes and actually see what they can really do, and actually see that they didn't get to where they are by luck.
No, and definitely Hugh Jackman didn't, because he spent years and years on the boards in the theatre, first of all, before he made his breakthrough. And I think the nice thing about him, and what I like in all of it, maybe the three people, is the humbleness. That's what really endears me to people, that, you know, and people that can give freely without having big egos, which I think is probably the main thing that I really admire in somebody.
To be fair, I wouldn't mind meeting Jesus.
Yeah, he would have been quite interesting to talk to, wouldn't
see,
he?
like, you know, I think.
If he does exist, that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To see if
a lot of people think he does.
To see if the hype was real.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, it's such a difficult one. I think every single podcast I do, I think it does change every single time.
Yeah.
And yeah, just, I don't know. It's a tricky one, a real tricky one. So moving forward, we don't have very long left. We've done an hour already. What drives you, Emma? What's next?
What drives me? Well, as I said earlier, I think is trying not to put too much pressure on myself. I think over the years I probably have done too much of that. I don't worry about what anyone else thinks of me anymore. I think I spent a lot of time worrying about that, when actually I now worry about less people. I just worry about my immediate family and the people that are really important to me. I think having the energy that I do, sometimes that attracts a lot of negative energy, people that come and zap that energy out of you. And I think, you know, I've learned to be much more disciplined in who I give that to, because it's exhausting. I would like to think that, you know, I still become very much a role model for my children. I'm doing it on my own. We all as a family have gone through huge adversity.
Such a short period.
But I think we've learned a lot from that. And I think it's made definitely my children all very much stronger individuals that, you know, sadly they've had to cope with a lot of things that most adults in their whole lifetime wouldn't cope with. So I see that as a massive positive. I know at the beginning they didn't see it, but I've watched them evolve. I think it's definitely strengthened me. It's softened me to a different empathy, a different level of empathy, you know.
How, like, sorry, I don't want to keep breaking you off, but like sometimes how do you deal with that level of empathy? So for example, you have been through so much in the last 5 years, and then if you hear somebody complaining, I know we said it before, those comments, man up, get a grip. If you hear somebody complaining over something you think deep down isn't really a big deal, how do you have that level of empathy?
Well,
how do you, as being, whether you're in charge of a company, on top in a being a parent, I don't know, in any type of situation, how do you deal with that?
I think it's very easy to, as you just said, to say man up. You know what? I think what you have to understand is that what is a big issue for me, or for somebody else, you know, or what I see isn't an issue for some, you know, big for me, could be a massive issue for someone else. So I try really, really hard to try and sort of pick up their energy, try and understand why they're feeling that way rather than judging people. I think too many people, you know, are very flippant of, you know, oh, what have they got to moan about? They've got this, they've got that. I think a lot of people thought that about me sometimes, that, you know, I had a very privileged lifestyle, and that with that, you know, I could buy everything, and what did I ever have to worry about? I think, and the same can be said for other people as well. I try very, very hard, and something I instill in my children as well is to never ever judge anyone, because you never ever know what's going on behind closed doors with anybody and what people are facing. Just because I'm more vocal and I'm happy to talk about things and give an awareness to people doesn't mean to say that everybody reacts in the same way. And I think it's having an understanding of that, and I seem to have an ability to gauge that with people and understand quite how much they do or don't want to talk about something. Yeah.
So on a personal question to me, and even I guess similar to Gadget Line here, we're still quite early on into our business journey.
Yeah.
We've probably been on this journey for at least 3 to 5 years now, properly over the last 3 years. What advice would you give somebody who's starting on this journey, who sometimes feel like we should quit, don't feel like we're getting the momentum, but we still continue to keep moving forward anyway? What advice would you give? Is there any tips you would provide?
I think the most important thing is to just completely stay true to yourself and what you initially, when you set up in your business, what you initially wanted to achieve, and that you never ever lose sight of that and what you want to achieve. It will naturally grow and be like a snowball and will gather momentum as you get much more experience. But I think it's very easy to be sideswiped by other people giving you advice. You should do this, you should do that. I'm not saying don't take people's advice. I always listen. And I think it's, just because I may talk a lot or you talk a lot doesn't mean to say you don't absorb in what people are trying to advise you or help you with. But I think if you can filter that sometimes, as I do, and take out the bits that you think, I can run with that, that's really, really helpful. But always stay completely focused on your end goal and determined. And I think if you do, as you quote on your talks as well, I think anything is achievable. But you've got to have that inner strength to really believe in yourself, and that sometimes it's difficult when you take knocks and you're having a bad time. But I think if you can always pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and tomorrow's another day, and not try and project too far ahead all the time. I think we're all guilty, aren't we, of having goals. I think goals are a great thing. I always start the new year with goals. My late husband, the first thing he used to do on New Year's Day was write down his 3 business objectives and his 3 personal for the year. And every year he would tick them, and then the next year would get bigger and bigger. And I think it's good. I think that if you can stick to that and never be frightened to ask for help. I think don't be too proud that if things are difficult and you need some help, it's not a failure in oneself to ask for help or guidance. Is probably one of my other things. Wow. I've tried, none of us are invincible, and sometimes you just need that extra bit of support, and from people that have been there, got the t-shirt, and that are willing to support you on your journey.
Definitely. Okay, Emma, I just want to say a massive thank you for today. Your story is really incredible, and the reason why I think this is a great time for the podcast to have with you is because I feel like you're just coming through everything you've been through over the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
And you've got so much more things, projects, excitement coming up, moving forward. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what you can do over the next couple of years. Plus, maybe we can get you on again, and we can talk about the progress you've made over that time. And also, if there's anything I can do to help, or Dave or anybody, then please do reach out. And but once again, thank you. Your story is amazing. With that said, guys, blown away. Complete different podcast today compared to what we normally do. There's so many kind of key things to take away there. We did get very personal, but I also feel like that's a good thing, because sometimes we go through a lot in our own personal lives, and it is hard to share those stories. It can also be hard to accept those stories sometimes. And one good thing what I feel like we've done today is talk about it. And when you talking, Emma, even kind of make me think about my own self, reflect on my own life, doing things, what I've been through, and actually how I can potentially move forward and progress as well. So yeah, thank you again. As you know, guys, please do hit that big red button, subscribe. If you're on iTunes, make sure you do subscribe. Follow us on all our social media. There's some incredible stuff on there, content that is designed to take you to the next level. Once again, thank you to Gadget Line for filming and making this all possible. And until the next episode, keep on working hard.